I was working the night shift at a hostel in Prague when an American guy, maybe 35, came down to the front desk at 11 p.m. He was wearing gym shorts and a college hoodie, holding his phone like it had personally betrayed him. "Excuse me," he said, way too loud for the quiet lobby. "I've been trying to order pizza for an hour, and nobody speaks English." I looked at his screen. He'd been calling a veterinary clinic. The pizza place was 2 numbers different. He stared at me like I'd just told him gravity worked backwards. That's when I knew it was going to be one of those nights. 3 months into this job, I'd seen patterns. The couple from Texas who tried to pay for breakfast with a $100 bill at 7 a.m., confused why we didn't have change. The woman from Florida who asked where the nearest Target was, genuinely surprised when I told her the closest one was 4,000 miles west. The businessman who got upset that our European outlet adapters didn't magically make his hairdryer work on different voltage, but my favorite was the lady who asked me to call her a taxi to that famous bridge. I asked which one. Prague has 18 bridges. She said, "You know, the one from the pictures." I showed her a map. She pointed at 4 different bridges. "These all look the same," she said. "Ma'am, one of them is covered in Baroque statues and is 600 years old." "Well, I want that one." "Which one?" "The famous one." We went in circles for 10 minutes before she just walked out, probably still looking for it. The thing is, these moments happen every single day. Different people, different misunderstandings, same confused energy. Americans arrive in cities they've seen in movies, expecting things to work exactly like home. And then reality hits them like a brick wall made of metric system and unspoken social rules. But that was just the beginning of what I'd witnessed over the years. Working in tourism across Europe and beyond, working as a tour guide in Berlin, I learned that Americans and maps have a complicated relationship. This guy, maybe 60, veteran type with a Marine's cap, pulled me aside near the Brandenburg Gate. "Excuse me, why doesn't my GPS work here?" I looked at his phone. He had airplane mode on. I pointed this out gently. "But I'm not on an airplane," he said, completely serious. "I turned it on to save battery." "Sir, that's not what it does." "Well, in America, it does." We stood there in the German drizzle while I explained how airplane mode works. He didn't believe me until his wife confirmed it. Then he got mad at Apple. That same week, an American student, early 20s with a backpack covered in pins, asked me where East Berlin was. I explained that the wall came down in 1989 and the city was unified. She looked devastated. But I wanted to see the Soviet part. "You're standing in it. This is the former East." "No, I mean the real East Berlin, with the guards and stuff. That doesn't exist anymore." "So, like, where did it go?" I didn't have enough time before the next tour to unpack that one. The museum where I sometimes worked had its own collection of moments. An American teacher, maybe 40, professional-looking with a lanyard, approached the information desk. "Do you have the Mona Lisa?" "No, ma'am, that's in Paris." "I know, but do you have a copy? We're a museum of German history." "Right, but every museum has one, don't they?" "That's not how museums work." She seemed genuinely confused why we didn't just keep copies of famous art from other countries, like museum gift shop greatest hits. Then there was the couple from California, both around 50, who asked what language Berliners speak. "German," I said. "No, but like day-to-day, still German, but for business and stuff. Also German." The husband jumped in. "He means like, do you all speak English to each other when tourists aren't around?" "No, we speak German because we're in Germany." They both looked at each other like I was messing with them. The wife whispered to her husband, loud enough for me to hear, "I think they're embarrassed to admit they learn English in school." I once had an American exchange student, 19, absolute mess of a human, come up to me near Checkpoint Charlie. "Where's the Berlin Wall?" I pointed at the exact preserved section we were standing next to, the one with murals and historical markers. "No, I mean the whole thing. It was torn down." "Yeah, but where are the pieces?" "All over the world. Museums, private collections, people's gardens. That's so weird. In America, we'd never tear down something historical." I didn't have the heart to bring up all the Native American sites, so I just smiled and moved along with the group. The best map incident happened with a middle-aged American woman. Really sweet. From somewhere in the Midwest, she asked me why her phone said Berlin was 8 hours ahead of New York when everyone knows Europe is 6 hours ahead. I explained time zones don't work uniformly across continents. She pulled out a world map on her phone, the kind that's flat and distorted. "But look, it's right there." She was measuring pixel distance. "Ma'am, that's not geographically accurate." "Well, it should be." She spent the rest of the tour convinced her phone was broken, and not that the Earth is a sphere. I switched jobs and ended up working at a restaurant in Amsterdam. That's where I learned that American expectations about service could start international incidents. First week on the job, this businessman, early 40s in a pressed suit, snapped his fingers at me. Actually snapped. Like I was a dog. Coffee. Black. Now, in the Netherlands, you don't snap at servers. You don't snap at anyone. I brought his coffee at normal Dutch speed, which is to say, when I got to it, he flagged down my manager. "Your waiter is ignoring me." I'd taken his order 3 minutes ago. 3 minutes. The tipping thing became my villain origin story. American couple. Young, maybe on their honeymoon. Super friendly and chatty. They loved everything. Complimented the food, took photos, the whole deal. Then they left a 20% tip on a €60 bill. My manager called them back. "You forgot your change." The husband looked confused. "No, that's for him. Sir, we don't do tipping like that here. Service is included." But he was so good. That's his job. He gets a real wage. They went back and forth for 5 minutes. The Americans insisting we keep it. My manager insisting they take it back. Eventually, they compromised by leaving €5 and looking deeply uncomfortable about it. But the worst was the lady from Texas, probably mid-50s, who asked me why the service was so slow. "Ma'am, you've been here 12 minutes, and you have your drinks and appetizers. In America, we'd have our main course by now. In America, you also don't spend 2 hours at a table enjoying your meal." "What do you mean?" "Here, dining is an experience. You're supposed to relax, talk, enjoy." She looked horrified. "So you're saying you want us to sit here for 2 hours? If you want to. Most people do. That's insane. I have things to do." "Then maybe don't come to a sit-down restaurant." I had an American student, early 20s, who asked me where the takeout containers were. "We don't have them." "What do you mean?" "This isn't a takeout restaurant, but I can't finish this. You can ask for it to be wrapped, but we don't do styrofoam boxes." "Why not?" "Because you're sitting in a restaurant in Amsterdam, not a food court." He ended up leaving half a perfectly good burger because the concept of asking for a container was apparently too foreign. Before he left, he asked if we had free refills on Coke. I almost laughed. "No, not even one? Not even one. Wow, Europe is expensive." Then there was the family with 3 kids, all under 10. Chaos incarnate. The dad kept trying to customize everything. "Can we get the pasta, but with no tomatoes? Add chicken, substitute the sauce, and make it gluten-free?" "Sir, this is a small restaurant with a set menu. In America, the customer is always right. In the Netherlands, the chef made a menu because he's good at his job." The dad got huffy. "So you're telling me you can't accommodate allergies?" "If you have an allergy, of course. but you're asking us to make a completely different dish." He left a one-star review later, saying we were inflexible and rude. We framed it. I moved to Sweden and got a job at a pharmacy in Stockholm, which is where things got truly weird. Americans and the metric system should never meet without supervision. This woman, maybe late 30s, asked me for cold medicine. I handed her a box. She read the dosage. "What's ml? Milliliters. How many ounces is that?" "About 0.034 ounces per milliliter." She stared at me like I'd spoken ancient Greek. "Can you just tell me how much to take?" "The box says 10 milliliters, but how do I measure that?" With the cup provided, she opened the box, looked at the tiny measuring cup and said, "This is impossible. In America, everything is in tablespoons, ma'am. Most medicine there uses milliliters too now. Well, mine doesn't." I eventually had to draw her a conversion chart on scratch paper. Temperature was another nightmare. A guy from Arizona, maybe 25 backpacker type, asked me for something for his fever. "How high?" 102, I paused. "Sir, that's Fahrenheit." "Yeah, we use Celsius here." "Okay, so convert it. That's about 39 degrees Celsius." "What? I'm not 39 degrees, I'm 102. I spent 5 minutes explaining temperature scales while he insisted that Celsius didn't make sense because water freezes at 32. Everyone knows that. Everyone in America knows that. He eventually bought the medicine, but told me Sweden should just switch to Fahrenheit to make it easier for tourists. The most surreal moment was a retired American couple, both in their late 60s, who asked me about prescription transfers. "We're here for 2 months and need our medications." "Okay, you'll need to see a Swedish doctor. We have prescriptions from America." "Those don't work here." "Why not? Different healthcare systems, different regulations." The husband got defensive. "But we have insurance." "American insurance doesn't work in Swedish pharmacies. That's discriminatory." "No, sir. That's international borders." They left insisting they'd call the embassy, which I'm sure went well. My co-worker had to deal with an American woman, mid-40s, who wanted to buy allergy medicine but refused to show ID. In Sweden, certain medications require identification. "This is a free country," she said. "Yes, which is why we have regulations. In America, I can buy whatever I want." "No, you can't. America also has pharmacy regulations. Not like this." The standoff lasted 20 minutes before she left, complaining on her phone loudly about socialist medicine while walking past our universal healthcare posters. But my favorite was the college student who asked me why everything was so expensive. "Sir, you're looking at prices in kronor." "What's a kronor?" "Swedish currency." "Why don't you use dollars?" "Because we're in Sweden." "But everyone uses dollars." "No, everyone in America uses dollars." He pulled up his banking app, realized the conversion rate, and went pale. "So this medicine is actually only like $8? "Yes." "Oh," he paused. "Your signs are confusing." The sign said 85 SEK. It had the currency symbol and everything. Well, how was I supposed to know that? Maybe by being in Sweden? The absolute wildest moment was a businessman, early 50s, who tried to pay with a check. A paper check. In 2023, in Sweden, the most cashless society on earth, my teenage co-worker had never seen a check in her life. She called me over. "What is this?" I explained. The American looked offended. "Checks are legal tender. Not here, they aren't. We barely take cash. That's un-American." "Correct. We're in Sweden." He ended up having to use a card, mumbling about how even third-world countries take checks. "Sir, Sweden is consistently ranked the most developed nation on the planet." He was not interested in hearing that, but the story that really stuck with me happened my last week at the pharmacy. This American woman, probably early 30s, came in looking exhausted. She'd been traveling for 6 weeks across Europe. She asked me for aspirin, pronounced it correctly, used the metric system, and had exact change in kroner. I was stunned. I asked her what her secret was. She laughed. I made every single mistake possible in France and learned from all of them. She told me about trying to tip a taxi driver in Paris who got offended, about asking for iced coffee in Italy and receiving a lecture, about showing up to a dinner party in Spain at 8 p.m. when it actually started at 10 p.m. The thing is, she said, packing her medicine into a reusable bag. Nobody tells you this stuff before you go. You just assume the world works like home, and then you realize it doesn't. And you either get mad about it or you adapt. She smiled. I chose adapt. Took a while, though. I think about her sometimes when Americans ask me why things are different here, because the truth is, these stories aren't really about Americans being clueless. They're about what happens when you grow up in a place so big and self-contained that you genuinely don't realize how much of what you consider normal is actually just American. Most people aren't trying to be difficult. They're just shocked that their baseline assumptions about the world don't apply everywhere. And these stories, they never stop coming. Every shift, there's a new one. Different person, different country, same confusion. Somewhere right now, an American is probably standing in a Japanese convenience store trying to figure out why the ATM closed at 11 p.m. Someone's arguing with a Brazilian taxi driver about air conditioning. Someone's asking a Norwegian why their pizza doesn't taste like Pizza Hut. The world keeps turning. Americans keep traveling. And those of us who work in tourism, we keep collecting these stories, one confused interaction at a time.